the members whom we will be introducing shortly. Today, the Assembly Standing Committee on Energy and the Assembly Standing Committee on Corporations, Authorities, and Commissions will commence a public hearing process to examine the impact of the potential closure of Indian Point Energy Center on New York system reliability and the economy. The committees will also hear testimony on plans to offset or replace the power currently provided by Indian Point. We're here today to gather evidence and to ensure that there are plans in place to address the electricity needs of New Yorkers should the plant discontinue operation. The committee will hear testimony from representatives of the Department of Public Service, the New York Systems Operator, Independent Systems Operator, Consolidated Edison, the City of New York, Charles River Associates, Energy Corporation, New York Affordable Reliable Electricity Alliance. There are certain documents that I'll be introducing as part of the record momentarily, but before we get to that, I will turn the mic over to Jim Brennan to make an opening statement and then to introduce the members of the Corporate Committee who are here.
Thank you, Mr. Cahill, and I appreciate the Energy Committee's co-sponsorship of this hearing greatly, and look forward to listening to...
My name is Rick Gonzalez. I'm Senior Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of the New York Independent System Operator. I'm responsible for grid reliability, wholesale market administration, and the ISO system planning functions, and I've been with the ISO since 1999. I'm here today to discuss the potential impacts to New York if Indian Point were to close. There are 3 key points to take away on this topic. First, in order to meet all applicable reliability requirements, replacement resources have to be in place prior to a closure of the Indian Point Energy Center. Failure to do so would have serious reliability consequences, including the possibility of rolling customer blackouts. Second, due to New York's existing transmission limitations, new generation, additional demand response, and limited transmission upgrades would likely be the potential solutions in response to an Indian Point closure in the next 3 to 5 years. And the last point is, New York's transmission system is aging, and many facilities will require replacement over the next 20 years. Whether Indian Point remains in service or not, it may very well be prudent to pursue upgrades to the existing transmission system to make better use of statewide generating resources, including renewables that have already been developed or for those additionally proposed throughout upstate New York.
We need to keep it online. We want it to be safe. As far as I'm concerned, no one has proven that we can do without it. The first person I'd like to introduce is Gavin Donovan from the independent power producers, who is at his own.
Well, I think Jerry Brown and Mark, we need Indian Point online as a way to attract businesses in New York State.
Thank you. John Ravitz, who's from the Westchester. John.
Good morning, I'm John Ravitz, the Executive Vice President and CEO of the Business Council of Westchester and a former state assemblyman. Business Council of Westchester represents 1,000 businesses throughout Westchester County. Closing Indian Point would send the wrong message of cost support. We need to be able to send a message to businesses that you can come to Westchester, that you can come to the downstate region, and you're not going to be hit over the head with huge energy charges.
Tom Klein from the Boilermakers Union.
How you doing? I'm Tom Klein. I'm the business manager for Boilermakers Local 5. I'm here in support of Indian Point basically for the jobs it creates for my members that live in the Hudson Valley and New York City area. We're also here supporting it for the clean, reliable energy that Indian Point supplies to New York City. Thank you.
Manny Arasich from the Insulators Union.
Good morning. My name is Matthew Arasich from Level 12. I'm actually a Westchester resident as well as a business worker in New York City. We have a lot to do with Indian Point, why we should think it stay open. Today, you have to relicense that plant because there is nothing in place to move forward. Thank you.
Mike Cavanaugh from the Millwrights.
Good morning, I'm Michael Cavanaugh, business manager of Millwright Machinery Electric Local 740, which is part of the New York City District Council of Carpenters. We do have a lot of our members that work up in Indian Point on the carpenter end as well as the Millwright end. Indian Point is a fantastic employment opportunity for our members. It needs to stay open. It would be a drastic hurt on my membership if Indian
A
Point.
general question of why aren't you stepping up to make transmission investments?
So I want to talk about that right now. There are two reasons why you would want to make a transmission investment. The first reason, and the reason that is an obligation on the part of Con Edison, is to make sure that the electric system is reliable. And we have made investments in transmission. This past summer, a new transmission line went into service that travels from Yonkers into Manhattan. 500 megawatts of new transmission into New York City at a cost of about $200 million. So that's a project where we make a decision, yes, that's a reliability need, it needs to be addressed, it's the right investment to make. The other issue where I think some of the discussion is happening in the CARES process at the ISO.
For those not familiar, the Public Service Commission regulates electric, natural gas, steam, telephone, cable companies.
Hi, my name is Dan Durrett. We're in the New York State Assembly hearing room here at 250 Broadway in Lower Manhattan. I'm here representing the African American Environmentalist Association in support of relicensing.
There you go. Let's try it again. I got it. Oh, yeah.
Well, we're here at the New York State Assembly hearing room on the potential closure of Indian Point. An interesting hearing so far today. Of course, the witness list was limited, so we are not on the witness list. But basically, we're trying to get our positions pointed out that, we support Indian Point. The emission-free source of electricity would be a huge environmental injustice if that facility is closed. So Indian Point should stay open so that the emission-free production of 2,000 megawatts of electricity will be available to the citizens of New York. We also hope that the New York State Assembly would consider environmental justice issues within their deliberations.
That's why we look at very closely what's happening on the reliability front. We're also trying to make the city a better partner, and as we're going to be issuing an RFP in coming months to look at how city-owned buildings can actually participate more actively in demand response programs, so that we can actually help alleviate some of the pressure from the grid by actually taking some of our buildings off the grid. So that's something.
Brooklyn Borough Hall in there, aren't we?
Okay.
Sure. This is Chris Russo from Charles River Associates speaking. In general, the overall, in the core scenarios we analyzed, the amount of the second bucket, the financial support required, ranged from $700 million to $2.1 billion in NPV terms, all in 2011 dollars. These are generally inversely proportional to the wholesale price increases. So the higher the wholesale price increase, the less the amount of additional financial support required, and vice versa. And our analysis showed that the price increases were in the range of 5 to 10% on the wholesale level. I believe Mr. Rose testified earlier that he came up with somewhat higher price impacts, but they're in the same ballpark.
Primarily from others. Well, the City University has done a lot of studies in the area of solar installations in urban environments. And in fact, I would say that in many respects they've become leaders in that field. Going to color your decision whether to invest further in those sorts of things on municipal buildings and whether to further invest in the technology.
So we took a look at the New York ISO's load forecast and how they account for efficiency, and we took a look at what Charles River did, where they discounted 50%. And we, in our study, adopted the New York ISO forecast. But we also said that it's possible to go above that. That, in fact, it's not close to what I would consider the maximum technical potential at all. We looked at a target of approximately stating 1.5% of state energy sales through energy efficiency. It's a metric that's used in a lot of states to identify, to compare sort of on a neutral basis how states and utilities are doing with energy efficiency.
In 1987, Entergy became the first electric utility holding company in the nation to commit to the NAACP's fair share principles. In the last 10 years, Entergy has spent more than $2 billion with minority and women-owned suppliers to provide a wide range of goods and services. Entergy purchased the Indian Point Unit 3 and James A. Fitzpatrick Unit from NIPA in 2000 as part of New York State's electric deregulation. And Indian Point Unit 2 was purchased from Con Edison in 2001. Since the purchase of the plants, Entergy has invested more than $1 billion in upgrades to the Indian Point facility.
But I want to talk to you about this other thing that's going on now, and that is the rush to try to figure out where 2,000 megawatts are coming from. And I submit respectfully to you that no matter what combination of suggestions come from either the city or any other forum, it just doesn't make the 2,000 megawatts to replace it. And the position I think you would find yourself in, you don't really sit there with a yellow pad and say 500 megawatts here, 300 megawatts here, and then assume that it's going to happen. Because we all know that it takes 5 years plus for permitting and construction of a facility. We don't have a reliable grid here in New York State, unfortunately.